about what you need to do to prepare your young teens for a matric or some kind of school leaving certificate. And I thought we'd just sort of have a global look at from a high level. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of, must I do, factorizing polynomials or like the nitty gritty. Let's just talk in general about preparing them for that stage.
Sure. So look, I think that it's important that we just quickly cover those basics. I mean, everybody needs to read, write, and do maths. Those things don't change, no matter what job, no matter what school leaving route you choose. Reading, writing, and doing maths. And if your children need concessions, then in the 21st century, there's lots of tools to help them with that for their matric exams. So that base being covered. If I look back over my 4 children, what they needed most was something called the executive function. Stuff that comes to us naturally, if we're good planners, is how much time I spend on this, how much time I spend on that, looking forward and saying, all right, if I need to give myself 6 weeks to do past papers, how much of my textbook am I going to need to do to complete? And, so those sort of things. And then also your timing in your day. How much time do I need to spend on each of the different subjects and that sort of thing? And I think that's something that we can coach our children in from the time they are young. And it then becomes irrelevant what school leaving course they follow, whether they're going to do the American high school, GED, Cambridge, CAPS. If they've got that skill in place, they are able to handle the challenge and the pressures on their time. What would you make sort of the big one for you?
Yeah, I think leading on from there, the other thing is that any young person needs to eventually reach that point where they take ownership of their life and their education, and they have that self-motivation to do what needs to be done. They need to reach that point where they decide, I want to do Cambridge or GED or whatever other option they choose. And it's good for them to be part of that decision-making process and to do the research and to decide which is the better option for them and their personality, their career aspirations, their academic motivation, all those things. But to own it and to say, this is what I want and I'm going to do it. And then, as you say, to plan what they're going to do and then to reach the required levels in whichever subjects it is that they're going to be tested. So I think those are the most important things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that sometimes us as moms, we can tend to shoot ourselves in the foot. We want our children to take ownership, but we don't start teaching them to do that young. Kind of we control everything about their waking, their sleeping, their planning, their curriculum choice, and we don't actually partner enough with them. And I think that's one of the concerns, is that we're so scared to hand over those reins because we feel this huge burden as moms that we've got to get it right for our kids. But if we actually bring them in when they're little and start teaching them right from young that this is their education, they're not learning to read to please mom. They're learning to read so that they can achieve a milestone, and that is then the stepping stone for the next achievement. So that starts from really young. You kind of don't jump in at grade 10 and say, okay, now I'm going to start teaching my child to take ownership of their education. Start when they're little. We said in the beginning that kids need English, reading, writing, and mathematics. What other academic skills would you put in there, or even just practical skills would you say are important for the 10, 11, 12 years?
Yeah, I think whichever school leaving certificate you do, generally having good maths and English is good. If you're going into the science field, or, if you're taking the GED, you do need a level of science, but it varies depending on what school exam you're taking and what your career aspirations are. But I think generally good reading skills, the ability to read quickly and with understanding, because in a test you're under pressure for time. The ability to think critically about what you're reading is important no matter which option you take. So probably focusing on the languages and maths is probably the most important thing to do. But I really like what you said about it's actually the mom that needs the mind shift. So to prepare the kids, the mom has to make that mind shift earlier in the process. I think that's pretty cool.
Yes, it is. And I think that I would just add in terms of the academic skills, is that the way for our children to, we don't want to narrow it down so much as, okay, moms only must do maths, reading and writing. Okay, what you really want our children to do, particularly in the young years, is have one of those broad liberal educations where they can touch on so many different things, so that by the time they get to grade 10, they're clear about where their passions and their interests and their strengths lie. And then you can continue to build up those strengths. Well, I always say that strengths take care of themselves. You don't really need to focus on those. But in terms of the weaknesses, you can really give them the tools that they need and build them up just to get them through that last 3-year grind or 1 year. And in terms of the reading and the comprehension, when they're young, again, using Charlotte Mason's principle with fantastic books and living books, and then the narration and the dictation and the copy work, those things are naturally built into your child. But if you're starting when they're older, you can find ways to be creative to make sure that those academic skills are in place. And okay, so that's character, that's planning skills, and that's academic skills. In summary, I mean, you've got your 3 that have made it through, and my 4 have. What would you say about the biggest thing or the top tip for preparing your child for their matric or school leaving route?
I think it's that they've got to want it, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, to just keep on pointing them and saying, this is your life, how can I support you in your life? Oh, great. Nice chat. Thanks, Jules.